This video will really help you be more confident when you take part in English conversations, because you're going to hear me having a video chat with my friend Lewis, who's also an English language teacher. There's a full guide to the vocabulary used and you can download it in the description. Hi, I'm Steve. Let's do this. We start by talking about places we like and don't like in the UK.
Steve, are there any places in the United Kingdom that, they're quite well known, but you're just not a fan of? You don't really like them?
Absolutely. Let me pick you up on something you've just said. And that was, you implied that people coming from other countries to the UK tend just to stay in London. And that's my experience as well. Like you, I teach people from countries all over the world. Quite often they'll say, I'm coming to the UK, or I've been to the UK. Where have you been? I've been to the capital. I've been to London.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it. I used to live there. I totally understand London and its appeal. It's historic. It's got great sights. It's built for tourists. It really is. However, honestly, I genuinely think 3 to 4 days is enough. And that's as someone who's lived there. 3 to 4 days. On the first day, get on one of them double-decker buses that you see behind me there. Go on the top deck with a guide, and you'll get to see all the main things. You'll listen to all the history as you go past, and then use that for the rest of your visit to go and revisit those places in your own time. Get on the tube, the underground train, catch a bus, even walk. Lots of places are walkable. Go and see Buckingham Palace. Go and see Big Ben. But after 4 days, waste your time there. Move out. Get on a train. Get on a bus. Get on a plane. We've got EasyJet, which is a cheap airline. It will fly you around the country. So I would urge people, don't stay in London. Spread your wings and go and see other places. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree 100%. It's weird because I've got some students who maybe live in the United Kingdom and they live all over the place. I've got a student who lives in Dewsbury near me. I've got another one who lives in Nottingham. I've got another one who lives somewhere around Brighton as well. But usually for people who come for a little trip to the United Kingdom, they'll either go to London, which of course, it's one of the best cities in the world. I've never lived in London before, but I do have friends who do, and they move to London and they love it. They can't get enough of it. And whenever I go, which is maybe once every couple of years, I'll go for a long weekend, spend time with friends, have a wander around the city, going to different areas, different pubs in particular, and just, soaking it all up, absorbing all of that atmosphere. But that's what people usually do when maybe they should expand their options, broaden their horizons and visit other places. And the other place that, in fact, is probably maybe the second most visited city in the United Kingdom is the capital of Scotland. It is Edinburgh. And I actually do like Edinburgh. I think it's beautiful. I think it's also a historical city. You've got a beach. You've got some nice hills, lots of great pubs, beautiful buildings. But before we started recording, Steve, you mentioned that you're not actually that keen on Edinburgh. How come?
This answers your first question that I just strayed from there. And it's places that people really think highly of, and I don't. And
what's your beef with Edinburgh?
Right. It's really a couple of things. I don't know Scotland very well. I used to live and work in London, and sometimes they would send me to Scotland. They would fly me to Scotland, and someone would pick me up at the airport. They'd take me. I'd do whatever I had to do. They'd take me back to the airport, and I'd fly back to London. So although I've been to Scotland many times, I've not actually seen Scotland. You know, I saw the inside of airports, I saw the inside of hotels, I saw the inside of chauffeured cars. So a few years ago, just before the pandemic, a friend of mine who I used to work with invited me to come and stay with them in Scotland. I jumped at the chance. They'd retired from what we did and become a lumberjack.
Oh, wow. That's unusual.
That's what I thought. So, someone who clears forests, cuts down trees. Now, I'll bet you've got an image in your mind of what this person looks like.
I imagine this person will be very muscly, a big beard, and of course, lumberjacks, they always wear the same like checkered shirts. And yeah, I just imagine a big, masculine, loud guy. But I guess that's not the case.
Her name is Wendy. She's 5'2". She weighs nothing. And she's a lumberjack. She maintains a forest. So she lives in a lovely little town in Scotland. I jumped at the chance to go up there. So I drove up to stay. And it was very nice. Went through a place called Gretna Green, which you might have heard of. It's quite famous. It's where people used to run away to get married. So there's a chapel there. You don't need to give notice. You just turn up, you get married. For centuries, it's become the place for people to run away to elope. In other words, to leave your family without any sort of permission to get married. Don't tell anyone. You go to Gretna Green, you can still get married there, and people still do. So it wasn't far from there. I went, stayed for a couple of days with her, and then said, I've never seen Edinburgh. So she says, what you want to do is you want to go on the train, leave your car here, just walk to the train station, catch the train, you'll be there about an hour and a half. So I did, and I got on this train, and the train was chock-a-block. It was packed, it was crowded, it was full of people. So much so that in the carriage where I was, I had to stand for an hour and a half. Like this. All seats taken, people packed like sardines in a tin.
Mm-hmm.
This was a very modern train. I'll get to why this has soured me against Edinburgh in a second. This is a very crowded train, but it was a very modern train. And in the corner of the carriage was a toilet. Now, the only trains I've ever been on, they had an ordinary door. And if someone was in there, it said engaged on it. And if it said it was vacant, you open the door, you go in, close the door, lock it, do what you have to do. This wasn't like this. This was like something from a spaceship. As I watched, stood up, surrounded by people went up and pressed a green button. And the whole of the door, which was massive, opened up to reveal the toilet and the sink and a little mirror inside. It was amazing. So I watched a few people do this thinking, right, I don't want to make a fool of myself and not realize how to open the door or what I'm doing. So I watched a few people do it. And with 20 minutes to go in my journey to Edinburgh, I thought, I'm going to try this out. So I, excuse me, went down the train, stepping over people, trying to get past. Got to the toilet door and there was the green light flashing. It was vacant. Pressed that button. It opened and there was this modern toilet and, amazing for me. I've never seen anything so modern at all. So I went in and there was a red button. Pressed that red button. Shut off the carriage. This is marvellous. Walked over and it was quite a large area. I think they make them so people with wheelchairs and disabilities can easily get in.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over, stood in front of the toilet, lifted the seat and started doing what I needed to do. I was having a wee. Halfway through, the door opened. There must have been 50 people who were bored, just stood and think, all now turning to watch me. I don't know about you, Lewis, but once I've started, I can't stop. So there's a woman on the other side who's pressed the button, and she's apologising. She's trying to get the door to shut. It won't shut. Eventually it closes. I finish, wash my hands, face red as a beetroot. That's when I walked back to the door and I realised there is 2 buttons on the inside. The red one to close it and a little yellow one to lock it. Why on earth? Why on earth is there 2 buttons? There should just be 1 button. If someone's in, they want that locked. But there was 2. So then I had the wonderful experience of going out back into the carriage of all these people and then standing for 20 minutes until the train arrived in Edinburgh. So I wasn't in the best of moods.
By the way, I've got to just butt in and jump in because I know exactly the toilet that you're talking about. And it's not just limited to like Scotland. We've got them in Leeds as well, in different parts of England. And it's usually one of these carriages where you haven't got the normal seats, but you've got the ones that are like fold down for people to sit on. And it's often where you've got people who have their bikes as well because there's more storage space. But obviously, if the train is chock-a-block and it's packed, then all of these people will be all together. And it is very slow. So both when you're opening it and when you're closing it, the door will slide across really slowly. So sometimes you're waiting as it's closing and you're like almost waving at people. It's like, okay, I'm just going to do my business now. All right. 10 seconds later, phew, now I can lock it. And it's happened to me as well, where somebody has pressed the button whilst I was like, maybe not midway, maybe not in the middle of the action, but I was maybe just about to, or I was just finishing. And it's like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'll be done in a second. But in your case, you were in full flow with a packed train, people staring at you. And I'm sure they were trying to be polite and like, you know.
No, they weren't. They were laughing.
They were cracking up. They were laughing their asses off. So I feel your pain. I feel your pain. And it is a little bit like a spaceship. And I understand why you were probably not in the best of moods after this public embarrassing moment. But surely when you arrived in Edinburgh, you'd see that the architecture's amazing. The city looks very nice. Scottish people, you know, they have a bit of a reputation for maybe not being the happiest bunch, but they're very, very cheerful and funny if, you know, you actually have a conversation with them. So you were in a bad mood. You were a bit grumpy, a bit moody after this embarrassing moment. But then you got to Edinburgh and you still didn't like it?
Right. As my friend had told me, the train was definitely the way to go because the train station is right in the centre of the
set
city.
You up.
So yeah, it was marvelous, really. I got off the train and I've thought about this and talked this over with other people who love Edinburgh and trying to think what it was that I really didn't like about it. And it's a very impressive city. There is no doubt. I found the architecture very dark. I mean, they use granite in a lot of their buildings, and it's a dark granite. It was an overcast day, so it was dark anyway. So it looked a bit like Gotham City from the Batman movie. It was a little bit dark. So I wasn't overly impressed with that. I'm sure on a bright summer's day, it would look completely different. I didn't like how much they'd given themselves over to tourism. It struck me that almost every shop was selling shortbread, which is a Scottish biscuit with and tartan was everywhere. You know, the tartan colours, the little square patterns. Every busker, street entertainer that we saw, well, it was someone playing bagpipes and wearing a kilt, which is the Scottish men sometimes wear this traditional kilt. And I thought it wasn't real. It felt like Disney had created a movie of a city. This is what it would look like. And I wanted to see real Edinburgh. So I decided I'd go and see the castle. And the castle is on the top of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the top of the hill and it's quite steep, this hill. So I thought, well, before I go in, I'll go and have a cup of coffee. So I stopped a Scottish person. Now, wherever I go, people are friendly. I don't get this. Oh, I went to Paris and people weren't very friendly. I've been to Paris lots of times. Everyone's friendly with me. Yeah, I've been to New York. Everyone's friendly there. I think if you're friendly, people usually are friendly. You talk with a smile. You've got a nice face. You smile at people. They're friendly, aren't they? Everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So found a nice gentleman come towards me. And all I wanted to do was say, excuse me, can you tell me where the nearest Starbucks is, please? I was not prepared for such a strong accent. And I'm good at understanding accents. And he was as broad an accent as you could ever hear. So I said, excuse me, can you tell me where the nearest Starbucks? See. I was like, well, I teach foreigners English. What language is this you're talking to me? You know? Oh, lad. I just smiled and went, oh, thanks, and carried on my way. Decided to miss Starbucks out, go straight to the castle. The queue to get in the castle was estimated at 1 hour, 45 minutes. It was so long. I walked back to the station. I went into the cafe. I bought myself a cup of coffee while I waited for the train out. I was actually in Edinburgh, a grand total of 2 hours. So, no, it wasn't for me. I had a bad experience there. That's not to say you shouldn't visit, because you should. Everyone I've ever spoken to says it's the best place in the world. Just wasn't for me.
No, I mean, fair enough. It seems like your experience, you were maybe a little bit unlucky with having this guy who had the thickest accent ever. And it just goes to show that for many students and people who struggle with different British accents, I think a Scottish accent is known for being the most complicated to understand. Because, of course, you are a Scouser. People say that a Liverpudlian accent is very tricky, not as tricky as Scottish. We have Geordies as well, people from Newcastle. People say that it's very difficult to understand them. And they might be right, but it's still easier than Scottish. And it's interesting because usually people do say that Edinburgh is kind of a posher version of Scotland, and Glasgow is like the real Scotland, which I've never actually been to Glasgow, so I can't really comment on this. But I know from friends, I have a Glaswegian friend, and she's got a very, very thick accent. It's a very nice accent, but it's very, very thick. And I had assumed that in Edinburgh, it wasn't the case, that people usually have a very kind of easy, neutral Scottish accent where you can tell that they're Scottish, but it's not that obvious. So maybe you just got unlucky. It wasn't your day, clearly.
It wasn't my day. That's it. It wasn't my day. Maybe this was a Glaswegian who had decided to have a little visit to another city.
Just to ruin your day.
Just to ruin my day, yeah. So go on, let me ask the question back to you then. Where have you been where people have told you, you've got to visit there, it's marvellous, it's wonderful, and you've got there and thought?
You see, I was thinking whilst you were speaking of my own answer, because maybe I'm not very well traveled in the United Kingdom, because I haven't been to all of these very, very typical tourist attraction cities. I've never been to Oxford. I've never been to Cambridge. I've never been to Bath. I've never been to these very, very famous places. Brighton. I haven't been to Brighton either. So The only city that I could think of that I visited and I didn't like, and I was only there for a few hours to go to like the open day for the university when I was making up my mind and weighing up my options of where I was going to do my degree. And of course, I visited Newcastle, I visited Manchester, I visited Liverpool, where in the end I went. And I also visited Birmingham. And when I went to Birmingham, maybe it was just a dark day. It was wet, cold, windy. I went with my mum. And as we were driving in around the outskirts, I just didn't see that many nice buildings. I don't know. And then when I looked around the university was beautiful. But it was so far out from the rest of the city. And in my mind, I was thinking, I want to live city life because I'm from a kind of town which is on the verge between countryside and city. We kind of have the best of both worlds. So my imagination of going to university was a place like Liverpool or Manchester or Newcastle or even Leeds, where the university is like built into the city. Whereas with Birmingham, it was on the outskirts, a big campus, kind of like what you imagine when Americans go to college, to university, where you have this campus life and you have a separate university city to the rest of the normal city. So that looked nice, but it wasn't what I was after. And then at the end of the day, just to kind of make sure that I had no doubts about my decision, we were wandering around Birmingham city centre, and I was just looking around like, I don't really see myself here. It feels very kind of normal and very industrial and not many like nice old buildings. And then you have this whole thing about canals, but even around the canals, it was just like, okay, it looks all right, but we've got the Leeds Liverpool canal. I'm used to having canals around me. So I don't have such strong feelings as you do with Edinburgh, because maybe I wasn't as unlucky as you were, but Birmingham it didn't appeal to me. And from that day, now, if I have to choose a city in the UK that I say I don't like, it would be Birmingham. But Birmingham's not a very, very touristy city anyway. People usually go to, well, maybe go to university, go shopping if you're from the surrounding area. There's not that much to see as far as I'm aware. But then
Can I
the other
say,
places, go on.
sorry, can I say, I guessed Birmingham. When you were
Yeah.
leading up to that and you said, well, I was trying here, I thought he's not going to like Birmingham. And I was absolutely right, because I don't either. And just to let people know, Birmingham's the second city of England. After London, it's the next biggest city. I have friends who go there all the time shopping, absolutely love it. I know people who have moved there and love it. Oh, I go down there just to see exhibitions because it's where the National Exhibition Centre is.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of Birmingham either.
You see, it's comparable with Manchester because Manchester is maybe a little bit smaller. And Manchester's not known for being the most beautiful city either. But I feel like it's got something. Manchester's kind of cool. And you've got lots of young people because of the universities. You've got the music scene. You do have a little bit more in terms of architecture as well. And then if you're in Manchester, you're in a very strategic location because it is kind of like the capital of the north of England. And you've got Liverpool, just 45 minutes train. You've got Leeds, about an hour's train. So it's a very useful place to visit and have as like a base if you're traveling around the north of England. But what I was going to say is that given that I haven't been to Bath, Oxford, Brighton, and Cambridge, I probably should and just see for myself what it's like. Because a lot of people do say that these are amazing cities, that they're beautiful, historic, worth visiting. So, have you been to these places? I assume so. And if so, do you like them all or not so much?
I used to have an unusual job working for the British government. And so they would send me to these places. Sometimes just for one day, sometimes like in Scotland for a few hours, sometimes for up to 6 weeks. And I once worked in Bath for 6 weeks. What I can tell you about it is it certainly has some beautiful places. It's famous because the Roman Empire, they took over the city and created these baths, public baths, which is what it's named after. And they're a sight worth seeing. But I think in 6 weeks, I don't think I met an actual person from Bath.
Mhm.
It's so full of tourists, particularly Americans. That's all I seemed to speak to for 6 whole weeks. It was almost refreshing to hear when someone said, when I'd say, "Where are you from?" and they'd say, "Oh, I'm local." Just never saw it. If you want to see a real Roman city that's far more interesting, in my opinion, go to Chester. Chester is a walled city. So the Romans built big fortifications all around it. A lot of them are still there. It's a beautiful little city. It's got all the old shops that over the centuries have been built and preserved. In my opinion, it's a nicer city if that's the type of thing that you want to see.
And then with Oxford and Cambridge, of course, because of the universities, these are well-known, famous, world-renowned. Are you a fan of either of them? Would you say they are
Um,
worth visiting?
I'm a Cambridge boy, so I quite like Cambridge. I haven't been for a few years, and I was talking to a student who's moved there and is studying in Cambridge University, and I was reminiscing about places I used to go and did they go, and I said, and of course, you always just take a bicycle and get round because that's what we did. And they said, you never see a bicycle now in Cambridge. It's all little electric scooters. All the students have a little electric scooter. And I was shocked. I was disappointed. We used to have bicycles, 6 chained together everywhere. And now modern times.
And a nice verb you used there, reminisce. So you were reminiscing, which is kind of like talking about while remembering the good old days, so to speak. So right now I'm back home at my mum and dad's. Whenever I meet up with my friends and we're catching up, we're reminiscing, saying, do you remember little Jimmy? Well, he's just had twins. Like, do you remember when he used to always fall over in class? Little Jimmy. So I'm reminiscing about the good old days.
Nice. It's perhaps a good time to say that if anyone's struggling with some of the natural language we're using, the expressions, the words, any of the vocabulary, that we're going to put a guide to what we're saying in the description of this video. I'll include the full transcript of what we said, an explanation of the words, and a little quiz so you all can test your knowledge.
Perfect. So yeah, that will be in the video description. And just to let you know as well that Steve and I, we plan on doing regular conversations throughout this year, once or twice per month. So if you have any suggestions of topics that you'd like us to discuss and waffle on about, then let us know in the comments because we'd be more than happy just to have a chat because this is almost like a bit of therapy for us, isn't it, Steve?
It absolutely is. Back to the subject, I've got another question for you, Lewis.
Go on. Shoot.
Tourist attractions. People come here to work, people come here to live, to the UK, I mean. Tourist attractions, of course they're going to see things like Big Ben. Of course they're going to see the Edinburgh Castle. We know that. Have you ever been to a tourist attraction and been disappointed?
I think I have quite a lot, but not so much in England or in the United Kingdom. Going back to Edinburgh Castle, yes, I did go. And luckily, when I went, there wasn't such a long queue, so I didn't have to wait that long. And it was nice, but meh. Like, it was nice, but it wasn't amazing. I got to see the crown jewels, and there were people taking photos, and it was all right. It was nice. But usually, I'm a bit stingy, a bit tight-fisted, and when I see how much it costs to go to certain tourist attractions or enter certain museums, and the fact that you have to wait such a long time, I just think, well, I can't really be bothered. And usually when traveling, you get to see the real city just by walking around, stopping in different shops, different pubs in particular. If I'm abroad, I'll try to go to nice streets and neighborhoods and markets. But like when I go to Paris, I never go to the Louvre. Whenever I go to Rome, I don't go into the Colosseum because maybe I should, granted, but I think usually these places look better from outside. And I'm not a very cultured person. And when they try to charge you an extortionate amount to be inside, I'm like, would it be better to spend that money on having a nice meal? And that's the conclusion that I often come to. So that's maybe my own problem, but usually I decide that it's not worth paying to go inside any of these huge tourist attractions. But what about you, Steve, in the UK or elsewhere? Have you ever thought, oh, what a rip-off. I paid 40 quid and it's rubbish.
Absolutely. Stonehenge.
You know, the pillars.
The pillars. The big stones, world famous. I wouldn't have made a trip there on my own. However, I'd been sent to do a couple of days' work in Wiltshire, where Stonehenge is. It was maybe a 20-minute drive. So I finished my work, had a quick bite to eat, and with my assistant, we jumped into the car and I said, let's go to Stonehenge. This is a chance not to be missed. So we drove up to Stonehenge. And first of all, £31.50 each to get in to see these stones. £31.50. I thought it was free. I thought this is a British monument. Why wouldn't it be free? So, having come all that way, paid the money, in we went. Up a path, and suddenly there it is, the stones. Not as big as you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
Really, not as big as you'd think. And round the stones, a good way around the stones, maybe 50 meters out, is a small barrier. It's made of rope, like what you might see in a bank to keep the queue in line.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Hello, Chris.
Is this barrier. And to stop you getting to the stones, I'm a very tactile person. I like touching things. So I wanted to get up to the stones, up close and personal. I wanted to touch them. So the pair of us, me and my assistant, walked around the far side. And I said, I'm going for it. And I jumped over this rope and I ran up to the stones. Took a selfie with me right by the stones. And when I put my camera away, I looked out and I could see this oldish gentleman. He must have been 60 or 70 in a uniform, shouting on his walkie-talkie. And can we just have a minute here to say how great a word walkie-talkie is? That's just it describes the radio perfectly. A walkie-talkie. He's running towards me in his uniform and he's shouting, I need assistance. I need assistance. And he's out of breath. His face is red. And I'm looking behind me to see what's happening. Who's he running to? And I realize he's running towards me. So I said, it's okay. You don't need assistance. It's just me. I was taking a photograph. Oh, you can't do that. 2 other security guards come running from different directions, all very old. So I'm like, seriously, I'm walking out. Don't worry about it. No. They come up. They took me by the arms and they frog marched me, which means one is either side. This old man's wheezing on the radio saying, it's all right. It's all under control now. He's being escorted. I'm saying, are you all right? I think you should have a sit down. They escorted me to the exit. My assistant is laughing her socks off. She thinks this is the funniest thing she has ever seen. And they throw me out and say, "You're not welcome here." And I said, "I've paid my money. I want my money back. I've been in 5 minutes." "No, you're banned. That's it." So Stonehenge, there are other stone circles in the area. They're better. They're nicer. You can go up to them and they are free. I wouldn't recommend Stonehenge to anyone.
It sounds like you're a bit of a rebel, you know?
If I don't see the need for a rule, no, I'll bend that rule.
You see, I haven't been to Stonehenge either, but I definitely wouldn't be paying 31 quid for it. And it just feels like you can see these things all over the country. Random countryside, moors and hills.
Absolutely.
You'll have different like stone structures or like rocks on the floor. Of course, they might not be as big or as uniform as the ones that you've got in Stonehenge, but it looks maybe cool from a distance. You can have some nice photos of it if there's a nice sunset as well. But that's about it. Like, there's nothing to actually learn, really. It's just stones in a circular structure. So, meh. It doesn't really appeal to me, to be honest.
Listen to more natural English conversation as we talk about motorbikes and British culture.
Riding a motorbike. Even when I was traveling around Southeast Asia, I was in Bali and Thailand, in Malaysia, and everybody was like zooming around on their scooters and motorbikes. And we were advised to do that because it was the best way and the cheapest way of getting around. But again, I was a bit of a chicken. I was a bit of a wuss. So I thought, maybe it's better safe than sorry. And maybe I shouldn't get on the motorbike because you never know what could happen if I do. And then I could crash or I could fall off.
Well, did I ever tell you about my motorbike?
No, I'm all ears.
Oh, this is a story. When I was 29, so quite old, I'd never been on a motorcycle like you, never been a passenger, never ridden one. I bought my first car when I was 17, so I never went the motorcycle route. I was in town and I was walking past a motorcycle shop, and in the window, there was a very nice leather jacket. And I thought, I would really like that leather jacket. So I went in, and as it happens, the guy in the shop, the motorcycle shop, was an excellent salesman. So I came out with a Honda 125 motorcycle, as well as the jacket.
Oh, wow.
Never been on one in my life. So I had a few lessons, and I thought, this was quite nice. The weather was nice. I could drive it round. This was okay. So I thought, I'll pass my test because I didn't like having L plates. In the UK, you have to have these learner plates on. I thought, I don't want them. I liked my little bike, but I didn't want these plates. So I took my test, and as it happens, I passed my driving test. The next day, I went back to the motorcycle shop and exchanged my little motorcycle for a Yamaha 600cc monster. So I've now got this huge bicycle, and it was lightning fast. I'm a really cautious driver. I drive really slowly. But on a motorcycle, I go a little crazy. So I was going quite fast around places. Now, I had all the gear on. I thought I was everybody. Nice expression. I thought I was more important than I was riding this motorcycle. My birthday was coming up, and I decided to set myself a challenge. I would ride my motorcycle at 100 miles an hour before my birthday. I was going to be 30. That's the legal limit in the UK. The fastest you can drive is 70. But I thought, it doesn't matter. I will just drive just for a moment, just so I can say I've done it. So I went onto the motorway, and cars on the motorway usually are going quite fast. Went in the fast lane, looking at the speedometer, and it's so fast, the motorcycle. In a car, you press the accelerator and it slowly goes forward. On a motorcycle, you turn the accelerator, which is on your grip, and you're instantly at that speed. It was like being on a spaceship. It was so fast. So I did that up to 80, no problem. Up to 90, no problem. Slowly turn the grip, 91, 92, 93. Suddenly, something switched in my head, and I became Lewis the Wuss. My legs started going like this, and as I get closer, I got to 97, 98. I could not do 100 miles an hour. So I pulled over and slowed down, went home. And it was a psychological thing, because if I came off at 98 miles an hour, I'm going to die. If I come off at 100 miles an hour, I'm going to die. It doesn't make no difference. But in my head, there was something that stopped my hand turning it, like someone was holding it. I tried 4 times. I'm now the day before my 30th birthday, and I was determined. So I got up early, 5 o'clock in the morning. I drove up to a motorway, the fastest roads that we have in the UK. There was nothing on the road. It was straight for miles. I went into the middle of the 3 lanes, and I got up to 90 miles an hour. No problem. 95 miles an hour. Got this determined look on my face. Got up to 99 miles an hour, and my legs started going like this. And I thought, I'm going to do it. I closed my eyes so I couldn't see the speedometer. It was a straight road, nothing on it. Closed my eyes and just twisted that. In a car, you would, as I say, you would slowly go forward. On this motorcycle, I opened my eyes 5 seconds later. I'm doing 125 miles an hour. And in front of me, a wooden pallet has fallen off the back of a truck and broken. A wooden pallet, what you load goods on. So those pieces of wood in the road, I'm doing 125 miles an hour towards it. I hit the wood and I took off like a Hollywood stuntman in a movie. I must have been in the air. It felt like forever. Like that. Slowed the bike down, but of course that didn't make a difference because the wheels weren't actually touching. Landed on the road. How, I have no idea. Drove home at about 15 miles an hour, shaking. Sold the bicycle that afternoon.
Really?
Never been on one since.
It's a miracle you survived.
Absolutely. I should be dead. It was
Like, when you were
ridiculous. It was
telling
the
the
stupidest
story-
thing I've ever done.
I was thinking like almost like cringing when you were telling the story, and like it is a miracle that you survived, because I mean, even if you're in a small car, it feels like you're going really, really fast when you're at 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour. Of course, the speed limit is 70. So you're not advised to go this fast. But then,
no, please, no one do this.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Don't ever do this.
Learn from Steve's mistake.
Yeah.
It almost cost him very, very expensive. But no, you survived. So amazing. And you have confirmed my belief that I never want to go on a motorbike.
But the leather jacket, I've still got it and it's lovely.
I have a fake leather jacket, but I've never been on a motorbike. But no, it was a good story. It was a good story. And now everybody drive safe. All right, now let's keep going and let's go over some of these other random celebrations or cultural stuff we've got in the UK. And one that I've got off the top of my head, it's quite fresh because I did this over Christmas with my friends, and it is a pub quiz. I promise, guys, I'm not an alcoholic. I drink a little bit with my friends and that's it. And over Christmas, we tend to drink a little bit more, and we tend to go to pubs a little bit more often as well. And when I went there this time, there was a pub quiz, and my friend from school was the quiz master, meaning that he was the person in charge of selecting all of the questions, reading out the questions, making some little jokes at the same time. And it was a Christmas themed pub quiz. And for people who are hearing me explaining this, thinking a pub quiz? A quiz in a pub? Exactly. That is essentially what it is. We're usually midweek when pubs aren't quite as busy. On maybe a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evening, they will organize a pub quiz. And it's split into different rounds, different sections. So you might have a sports round, a geography round, general knowledge, a music round. And usually you'll get together with friends or family in groups of, let's say, 3, 4, maybe 5 people, and you'll listen carefully to the quizmaster as he reads out these questions, and you've got to try to guess all of the answers without cheating, of course. In the past, I imagine cheating was very difficult. Nowadays, with your phone, it can be very tempting. And some people you will see will be looking on their phones for certain questions. And then it can get a little bit heated where you'll be pointing the finger at other groups because usually with a pub quiz, there is some kind of prize, which might be, I don't know, a round of free drinks, or it might be a little selection of chocolates, something like that. But pub quizzes, I don't know. They're so fun. It's a nice thing to do midweek, a nice excuse to get together with your friends. And this is very common at pubs all around the country. Personally, I'm not very good at them, but I still have fun. So that is a pub quiz. Steve, do you ever go to the pub for quiz night?
I'm not a big pub goer like you. I drink socially. I don't often do pub quizzes, but I can tell you something that happened to me once. In a long time ago, I had a job where I was sent around the country, and I was sent to Newcastle to do a job, and I had to stay overnight. So I'd done what I had to do. I was in the hotel. I was bored, so I thought I'll go into Newcastle City. It's up in the northwest. The northeast of the UK. And I walked into this pub just for company, really. So I walked up to the bar, and while I was stood waiting to be served, 2 young ladies came up to me. Never seen them in my life. And they've got such a great accent, Geordies. The Geordies are the name of the people who come from this area. It's a lovely accent, one of my absolute favourites. And one of the girls said to me, "Are you clever?" And the other one said, "Do you read books and that?" And I said, "Well, I'm moderately bright, and yes, I like reading." So they said, "You're on our quiz team then," and they paid for the drink. So okay, I
Awesome.
sat down, and suddenly I'm in a pub quiz. Fortunately, we won, and the prize was a tin of roses. And let me just explain to people who don't know, a tin of roses is a large tin of chocolates. And the brand name's Cadbury's Roses, but they're chocolates. And the girls had them on the table, ripped open the lid, and everyone was invited to just take a sweet or take a chocolate. And I thought, oh, this was lovely. It turned into one of the best nights I've ever had, really. And it was just randomly walking in and someone saying, "Come and join my pub quiz."
I mean, perfect. You must be very bright. You must be very clever because they don't sound so clever if the question that they asked you was, "Do you read books and stuff?" That was like the qualifier to see if you were able to get in the team. So good job.
I know lots of unusual facts, and quizzes usually have these unusual facts. They just stick in my brain. Useful things that I could actually use in everyday life. I can't remember a thing But ask me any state capital in America or what were the original names of the Siamese twins. I'm your man.
Okay, perfect. So if I'm ever trying to set up my own quiz team, I'm counting on you, Steve.
Yeah, for the unusual things, yes.
No, so we've mentioned the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes, Bonfire Night. We've mentioned pub quizzes. Steve, what other cultural stuff that are synonymous with the UK comes to mind?
Pantomimes.
Okay, pantomimes. What are pantomimes?
You just mentioned Christmas, and straight away I thought, what do we do that other countries would be surprised about? I don't think any other country, maybe Australia, maybe Canada, but certainly they've got strong British associations. But in the UK, around Christmas time, theatres up and down the country, in small towns to large major cities, they all put on this play that's called a pantomime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only time that it's ever shown. They're hugely popular. They're sort of aimed at children, but adults go as well and join in the fun. I don't really know how to explain them. There's about 5 different pantomimes that regularly get put on. The things like Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, Snow White, Peter Pan, which is the only one I've ever been to, Peter Pan. They're a big production. They're fun. They have funny songs. They tell jokes. Women dress up as men and men dress up as women. So the lead character is called a principal, which means first in English, the principal boy, and that's usually a girl. And there'll be an old woman, someone's mother, the princess's mother or someone like that. And that's usually an old man dressed up as a woman, which is called being in drag in English.
Mm-hmm.
And there's audience participation. In other words, the audience can join in. So there's set things you do. When the bad guy, the evil one, comes on behind the hero, the audience shout out, "He's behind you." And then the hero will look behind them and say, "And the guy is hidden." So you say, "No, he's not." And then the audience shouts back, "Yes, he is." And that goes on for 5 minutes. It's a fun thing. We have huge stars who get paid a fortune. Sometimes Hollywood stars come over and just for a week's work, they'll earn £100,000 just for appearing in a pantomime. So it's a lot of money. People off the TV come, but the tickets are quite expensive. In the Liverpool Empire this year, I didn't go, but I think tickets were around £40, £50. So if you've got a family, it's quite pricey. It's quite expensive. In London, in the West End, the famous theatre district, you can easily spend £150 a ticket to go to a pantomime. That's if you can get a ticket because they sell out so fast. What about you? Give me some memories of pantomimes.
I mean, to be honest, I've never been to any pantomimes. Of course, I've seen it on TV and I've heard about it. And this classic thing of like, "He's behind you." That is what comes to mind the most when I think about pantomimes. And it's essentially just a very extravagant, over the top, a little bit kind of loony, crazy version of a play. So it's a special Christmas play where it's all very, very over the top. And it's a way of kind of like bringing in a little bit of Christmas spirit. And it is called pantomime. But a lot of the time people shorten it and just say panto. Like, "Oh yeah, I love a bit of panto." Like, I love pantomimes, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never been, and I haven't even seen one on TV for quite a long time, because that's how I remember I used to watch them. But honestly, it's been a long time. Maybe this year for Christmas, I might try and go. Let's see.
Well, we use the word now as well, don't we? Because you explained it brilliant by saying it's crazy. And it's very rehearsed, but it's rehearsed craziness. So you think people are just making things up, and obviously they're not. And now in everyday life, if something goes terribly, say you were at a meeting and someone storms out and someone comes in and starts talking about something not what was on the agenda of the meeting, what you're supposed to be talking about, afterwards you might say, that meeting was a pantomime.
Uh-huh.
And that comes from that craziness. So, but I don't think other countries do them. I'd be surprised, but perhaps people could let us know in the comments do you have pantomimes in your country? Have you ever seen one? Do you ever get the chance? Go. They're good fun.
For sure. And given that you mentioned that, at the same time, whilst we're sharing different cultural stuff, traditions that are really common in the UK, let us know in the comments, where are you from? And tell us one interesting cultural thing that you celebrate in your country. We'd be eager to find out. And let's continue, because you know, Steve, and the audience, that I love my food. So the next thing that I have to bring up is right around the corner, in fact, because we're recording this at the beginning of February. By the time this comes out, it will be more or less that time, which is Pancake Day. Which, I mean, just saying it like that, Pancake Day, a day of pancakes, sounds amazing, I guess. And it's always celebrated, I think, at the beginning or mid-February, because it is Shrove Tuesday. It is, right?
Shrove Tuesday, yeah.
That's it. And I don't know exactly the origin, but I suppose it's religious, where essentially you will be at home and you will make lots and lots of pancakes, or perhaps you'll invite people around to your house and make pancakes. And traditionally in the UK, our pancakes are not like pancakes that you would get in the United States. In the United States, they're quite big and fluffy with maple syrup, bacon, whereas in the UK, our pancakes are basically crepes. So they're very, very thin. You'll, of course, flip them as well. And the usual toppings would just be lemon and sugar, which is so simple, but so tasty at the same time. Nowadays, of course, we have different toppings as well. If you want, you can make savory pancakes, but I think it's less common. But in my house, we'd have lemon and sugar, maybe some Nutella and banana, maybe some strawberries and cream, but we probably limit it to that. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly the origin, but I guess it was that households would want to use all of these sugary things before Lent starts. And Lent is the period of, I think, like 40 days, more or less, that goes from Shrove Tuesday until Easter. And for example, my mum usually tries to stop eating sugar or stop eating chocolate for these 40 days. And then she allows herself to start eating chocolate or sugar after Easter. You can tell I'm no expert with religion or history. So, Steve, am I kind of on the right lines? Is that the origin of Pancake Day?
Beats me. You've got me here. I don't do Pancake Day.
Oh, no?
Don't like pancakes. Don't like the American ones. Don't like the British ones. I have tried them. You're right. It's only on Pancake Day, Shrove Tuesday, when this all happens. If they were so good, why don't we do it for the rest of the year? I've never given anything up for Lent. Easter passes me by, except for the eggs. I do like an Easter egg.
Okay, that's another thing then, because I don't know if Easter eggs are internationally popular. In some countries, I'm sure they are, but we are quite famous for having lots of chocolate and Easter eggs around Easter. So, Steve, how does it work? What are Easter eggs?
So, I've made an Easter egg once.
Oh, wow.
A claim to fame. I've made an Easter egg once. It's a giant egg. Usually they're big. although probably the most famous ones are actually the size of a chicken egg made by Cadbury's. My brother used to be the director of Cadbury's, so we used to always get hundreds of these things. But the Easter egg you would give as a gift is first size of your head, really. And it's made of thin chocolate. And somehow the chocolate in an Easter egg tastes better than the chocolate that you get in a bar. And I'm not sure why. But that's really true, isn't it? Do you not think when you crack a bit of Easter egg and eat that, it's much better than just a square of chocolate from a bar? I don't know how that works.
Maybe it's because you're looking forward to it for longer. You'll often buy an Easter egg a few weeks before Easter, maybe, and then you'll just have it around the house and it'll be like looking at you. You'll be looking at it thinking, oh, I can't wait to have a bite. So maybe it's that expectation, that anticipation that makes it taste better. But of course, I mean, this is something that growing up, I'd always think, all right, I'm going to get an Easter egg from my mum and dad. Check. Grandma and granddad might be getting me an Easter egg. Yes. And my other grandma and granddad will be getting me an Easter egg. So then on Easter morning, you'd wake up and start devouring all of this chocolate, which usually your parents wouldn't want you to eat too much chocolate because it's bad for you. You might get a bit hyperactive as well. But there are certain days when it's allowed, such as Easter.
It's true. It's so true. But like I say, Easter passes me by. It really does.
Great. So now I've got a few other things. Just thinking of them and like behavioral stuff that us Brits tend to do or have. I'll name a few and then you just pick which one you'd like to explain. So it's common in the UK to tip. Maybe it's becoming less common nowadays, but traditionally people would tip 10% when you go out for a meal. That's one. Another one is queuing, which is known that, well, us Brits tend to love our order and we like to queue up for a long time, and we hate it when somebody will try to jump in line and try to skip the queue. Oh, makes our blood boil. And one more I could mention is apologizing for everything. There are memes and reels making fun of English people because we often say sorry, even when we don't mean we're sorry, but it just comes naturally. It's like, oh, sorry.
Sorry,
no,
I missed that last one. Sorry.
Sorry. So out of these three cultural things, tell us about one of them.
Tipping.
Okay.
I don't understand tipping. Sometimes I wish I was Japanese because in Japan there's no such thing. In England, I usually round it up. Usually 10%, or if I buy something and it's £4.50, I will give them a £5 note and say keep the change. But there's only set services that you do that for. You do it to your hairdresser or your barber. You do it to someone who gives you a drink. You do it to your waiter. But you don't do it to someone in a supermarket who goes and finds a product for you. You do it to a taxi driver, but you don't do it to a bus driver. It's a strange thing. The first time I went to America, I could not believe their tipping culture. It is mental. It absolutely is. I've been in a restaurant and a chap has ordered. It was quite a well-to-do restaurant. You know, we were eating lobster. You know, it wasn't a cheap place. And the waitress came and left the guy's bill, and he got up, paid the bill, just left the money on the table, and he walked out. And the waitress saw that he hadn't left a tip. She chased him down the street, shouting at him for not leaving his seat. Paid his bill, but you'd have thought he hadn't paid anything. Where's my tip? And I thought, oh, where's my wallet? I'm going to leave her lots of money. I don't want to chase me down the street. It's craziness in America. 30% is not unusual. 40%, not, it's generous, but it's not that unusual. I was in Las Vegas, and to get a taxi in Las Vegas from one of the big hotels, you go up the back and there's a queue of taxis, but they queue across the road. They don't queue right where you're standing. They queue parked up in what they would call a stand, we would call a rank. There's a taxi rank. And there's a chap, a doorman, and he stands there, and you go up to him and he says, "Good evening, sir. Where are you going?" And you go, "Oh, I'm going to the Excalibur Hotel." "Very good, sir." And he beckons the next taxi over, and the taxi pulls over. He opens the door for you. No, sorry, he leans into the driver and says, "This gentleman's going to the Excalibur Hotel." And the guy goes, "Okay." And he opens the door, and as you get in, you're expected to give him $10. All he has done, not the taxi driver, the guy who opened the door, and he goes, "Have a good evening." $10? And there's a queue of people. This guy was making hundreds and hundreds of dollars every hour just by going, "Where are you going? Have a nice evening." That's all he did. He was probably made more than, I don't know, a doctor, a surgeon, just by opening car doors. America, crazy.
Ridiculous. Like, personally, I'm a little bit stingy. I'm a bit tight-fisted, so I don't often tip that much. Like, here in Brussels, in the EU in general, I don't think it's that common to tip. Of course, you're allowed to anywhere you go. In particular, if restaurants, it's kind of usually a nice thing to do if you leave 10%, or as you said, you just round it up to a nice even number. But personally, I'm only going to tip if I feel that the service was impeccable. If I've
You
gone
went
to a
above
nice
and
restaurant.
beyond.
If people are going above and beyond, the waiter or waitress really make us feel welcome, we have a great time, they're cracking some jokes, making some nice conversation, then I feel like, okay, yeah, they deserve it. I'm going to tip. But if it's just normal service, then I'm not tipping. And nowadays, I think it's common for restaurants to already put like service charge included in the bill.
Yes.
So they're almost forcing you to tip. And here you are in your right to ask them to remove the service charge, because to me, it feels ridiculous again.
But
like,
you
should be
feel
paying for
terrible
what
if you
you're
do
receiving.
that.
You feel terrible. And a lot of the time when I'm paying by card, they'll like set it up where it'll come up with no tip, 10%, 20%.
Yes.
And then they know they're making you feel guilty. So every
Yes.
time I will click no tip. Like, if you're begging for it, I'm less likely to tip you. If you don't force me to tip you, then maybe I'd want to. But this gets on my nerves in the UK and the rest of Europe. But imagine living in the United States, where even if you go out to a pub or a bar, you're still expected to tip them, which is unthinkable in the UK. If you're in a pub just getting a drink, you wouldn't tip. You'd only tip if you're in a restaurant or something similar. And I've heard from people that if you don't tip the first round that you get in a bar, you're just not going to get served again. Like,
Pretty
they
much,
won't come
yeah.
back to you, which is like, seriously? Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. In fast food restaurants where you're collecting it yourself and taking it away. Tip the person who just goes, "There's your burger." What for? I'm taking it away. I'm taking it to my table. You're not. Oh, it drives me mad. Americans, if you're out there, put your comments in. Come on, argue with us. Tell us we're wrong and we should tip, because we think it's crazy.
And all of this comes down to the fact that these people aren't paid well by their employers. So then it's up to the customers to pay for their salary, which is like,
Yes.
seriously? It's just helping the big guys again. So the owners of the restaurant can make more money because the consumers are the ones who are going to end up paying for these poor waiters and waitresses. Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Lewis, we're agreed. We're of one mind. I've got one for you. Can I do one of mine? Insulting people. Insulting people that are your friends, but you never insult people that aren't. And it comes to mind, the more you insult someone, the more you like them in England, which sounds ridiculous, but it's so true. Our very first time when we did one of these chats, you've got a hairy chest and you were wearing your shirt open and you're showing it like Tarzan, you know? And I haven't got a very hairy chest. And I think I had a big jumper on. And I made a comment about you looking like a gorilla. And it was just in the middle because I like you. You know, I think of you as my friend. So I would never, if I didn't know you, if I didn't like you, I would never say it. But I said, oh, look at you looking like a gorilla with your hair hanging out. And there was a comment off one of your viewers saying, I thought that was terrible what he said to you. And it was like, that's because you're not English. All the English people who would watch would say, oh, they must really get on. They're good mates. What do you think?
Which is why I'm allowed to say, you old so-and-so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, I agree. It's a good point that among friends, the closer you are, the more common, the more likely it is that you will end up making fun of each other and insulting each other. And that's a little tip that you can remember.
Listen as we talk about food.
So I'm curious, Steve. Are you a foodie? Do you live to eat, or do you eat to live?
Ooh, that's a clever question. I bet that's taking you all day to think of that as the first question, hasn't it?
It genuinely hasn't. It just came to me. But
I'm impressed.
As I was saying it, I was like, all right, am I going to say it right or not? And I did.
Well done. Am I a foodie? I love food. Right. To get into it, to explain properly, you have to understand, when I was growing up, I come from a very poor family. So food wasn't in plentiful supply. We used to go to bed hungry sometimes. Not to anyone's fault. My mum and dad worked really hard. They just didn't have good paying jobs. There was lots of people in the same boat as us, meaning there was lots of people the same as us. And when I started my first job, as a student, you don't have a lot of money. So, we lived on pot noodles and, the cheapest of everything. I certainly would just make a sandwich. That cheese sandwich would see me through the day. But when I got my first job, it came with a very nice expense account. And so suddenly, when I was sent from my office out to work, I could pretty much go to any restaurant and have what I wanted and never have to pay for it.
A new world opened up to you.
Absolutely. So until my 20s, I'd probably only ever been in maybe 3 or 4 restaurants in my life. So I had a sort of reverse snobbery. I looked at people in restaurants and thought, I don't even know what to do when I go in there. Talking the late 70s, early 1980s. And so I was a little bit nervous going into a restaurant in case I said the wrong thing, didn't order the right thing, didn't know what half the things on the menu were. The most exciting food we had was fish and chips, and that was a treat, maybe once every month or 2 months. So suddenly, I remember the very first time I was sent out to work, and it was to an area called the Cotswolds, which is a very well-to-do area. And I knew my hotel was paid for. It was a lovely village. It was a lovely hotel. But the only restaurant which was attached to the hotel was the only one in the village. And it was run by someone called Egon Rone. And it had a Michelin star, which is
very fancy.
Yeah, a fancy, expensive restaurant. That's how they're measured. There's not many restaurants got these. So I was straight on the phone to my boss saying, where am I supposed to eat tonight? Once I've done the job, where do I go and eat? Because this is the only restaurant. Otherwise, I'll have to get in the car and I'll drive like 5 or 6 miles. And I don't really want to do that. He said, you're new to this expense account. Order what you want.
Treat
So I
yourself.
went in and it was a lovely Spanish lady who was the waitress. I remember that. And I was just learning Spanish. So I was practicing with her and she said, what do you want? I said, bring me the most expensive of everything. And as it happened, it was ostrich, the main course.
Okay,
So
that sounds
my
a bit
first
weird.
expense account meal was in a Michelin-starred restaurant, and it was eating ostrich.
As you
Over
do.
the course of the next 30 years, I became a foodie because I could, and for me, it was free. So, yeah, in answer to your question, yeah, I am a little bit of a
Okay.
foodie. I'll have a go at anything. I'm quite adventurous. But are you adventurous with food?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not a picky eater. I'm not a fussy eater at all. In fact, a funny story is that my first word ever, apart from like mummy or daddy, the next word was more. So I've always been a little bit greedy and I've always been a little bit chubby, or at least when I was growing up, I just wanted more and more and more. I was never satisfied. So for my parents, I was like a dream because I see now my sister with my nephew and he's very picky. He's very fussy. He only eats certain things, which is a bit frustrating for them. But when I was a little baby and a child, I was always like, yeah, give me everything.
Give me.
Give me all of the food. So I like trying different tastes, and my family have always been open to different cuisines, spicy food, Asian food, a little bit of everything, all sorts. So I'm kind of grateful for that experience because I've always loved eating out. I've always loved cooking as well. And even before I went to uni, one of my guilty pleasures was watching like food programs, whether it's like food travel documentaries or like Master Chef, and then other things like Come Dine With Me, which is a British classic where basically you have dinner parties and people will cook a 3-course meal for 4 other guests, and then they will rotate. So on Monday, for example, I'm cooking, I will prepare the menu, and I'll have 4 guests. Then the next day, you go to one of your guests' house, and they will cook another 3-course meal. So I've always been interested in the world of food, and I've always loved eating. And if I'm having a tough day or a long day, I will look forward to my meals, and this will get me through the day. So to sum up, yes, I've always been curious, never been fussy, and I've always been a foodie, and I live to eat rather than eat to live.
Great expression. Can I pick you up on, you went through, I've seen all of those programs. I like watching them as well. But the one I recommend to my students, and I recommend it all the time. If you have a one-to-one lesson with me, you're going to get recommended to watch this. And it's the Great British Bake Off. I think that is such a good example of different regional accents coming together in a nice friendly way. They don't just talk about cooking and baking. They're helping each other. They're having genuine conversations. I think it's probably, for me, one of the best TV shows to learn English I've ever seen.
You see, on that note, I've never had that much of a sweet tooth. So I've always loved savory food, and I get really excited about having a nice savory meal. And if I eat out, then I'll always try and get a starter and a main. But when it comes to dessert, I'm not fussed. I'm not bothered. Like, of course, I like chocolate. I like ice cream, but it's not what I get excited about. I haven't got a sweet tooth. Steve,
No.
have you got a sweet tooth?
I haven't really, but answer me this. So you just use the word dessert, and there's 4 terms we use really for that, isn't there? There's dessert, there's afters, there's sweet, and there's pudding.
Pudding's a common one.
Use dessert all the time? Do you never use any of the others?
I wouldn't use afters, personally. I'd use sweet,
No.
yes, and I'd use pudding quite a lot. Pudding's quite a common thing. It's like, oh yeah, do you want any pudding? Like, what puddings have you got? But to be honest, maybe it's the fact that I've been living outside of the UK for so long that I tend to be a little bit more neutral in the terminology that I use. So then I don't use as much slang as maybe I do when I'm back home with my friends and family. And then their use of certain words will rub off on me and I will start to pick it up a little bit again. But I'd say my go-to now is probably dessert. And then if not, it'd be pudding. And just on that note, some of my students will struggle between the pronunciation of a very, very dry place, like the Sahara, the Atacama, the Gobi Desert. Stress at the beginning, desert. And then if you're having a pudding, you're ordering a pudding, you're ordering a dessert. Dessert.
Very good. I've got a food story connected with a desert. Sure.
Okay.
Not dessert,
Go on, tell us.
I was once lost in the Arizona desert. And I'd been told I was right on the border with Mexico, and it was a very dangerous area, this particular area I was in. And I was told, no matter what happens, don't run out of fuel. Make sure your phone's fully charged. Don't run out of water. Always make sure you know where you're going. And I got lost. And the sun goes down in the desert. Like 1 minute it's day, the next minute it's night.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get a signal on my phone while I'm driving this big 4-wheel drive. None. I thought I've just drunk the last of my water and the little red warning light for fuel had come on. And I thought, I'm going to end up sleeping in my car. And this is not the safest area in the world. This is not like just down the road from your house. And I was driving, and you know, when you're nervous and you start hunching over the wheel, this is hunching, you know, and you're tight on and you feel the sweat starts coming. You think, oh, this is going to be really bad. And suddenly I saw a light in the distance. And as I got closer, the car's starting to go, ga-dung, ga-dung. My fault, totally stupid. But the car's just on fumes now. It's just coasting. And it was a Holiday Inn hotel. And I just came to a stop and the car cut out. And I went in and the lady was like, hi, we're having a wedding at the moment. So I said, have you got a room and have you got something to eat? And she said, oh, sure. Just go past the hotel. There's a restaurant next door. So I went, I got a room, had a shower, I was hungry. I hadn't eaten all day. Went next door, had the best meal of my life. Someone says, what's the best meal you've ever had? It's that one.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it was the food, not sure if it was the service, not sure if it was the actual restaurant itself. It was the relief that I was alive.
Desperation as well. You were so desperate. It was the desperation. It's like, oh, I must eat.
Absolutely.
It was like an oasis that you saw in the desert.
Yes. Yes.
Do you remember what it was that you ordered?
Surf and turf.
Okay. What is surf and turf?
So surf and turf, you don't see it much in England, to be fair. It's very American, I think. I could be wrong there. Perhaps I just don't, because restaurants in England that have that. But it's where you have a combination of meat and something that comes from the sea. So meat, the turf part, turf's another word for grass. So animals eat grass and then they end up on your plate. And surf is waves coming in. That's called the surf. And so things from the sea. So usually it's things like steak and maybe lobster on the same plate.
Perfect. Delicious. If you are an indecisive person, then you're like, do I want fish? Do I want meat? Surf and turf. That's what you go for when you're panicking. Now, from here, we're going to speak about 10 different classic British dishes. But I'm curious to know if you think that British food, English food, gets a bad rap, and if it's actually true that English food is disgusting. Because you'll hear from people around the world that'll say like, oh yeah, London was amazing, I love the UK, but the food, ugh. I just went to Italian restaurants, I went to Chinese restaurants, I didn't go to any pubs or any British restaurants whilst I was there. So it does have this bad reputation. Steve, do you think it's worthy of having this bad reputation?
I think some places are still. I think it's got a lot better. People expect a higher standard now. And there is this standardization because there's so many franchises, shops that are owned by a chain rather than an independent. So if you go to Starbucks in San Francisco, you go to Starbucks in Madrid, you go to Starbucks in Manchester, you can have pretty much the same experience, the same sort of service, the same drink. And we have chain restaurants now, McDonald's, Burger King, pretty much the same wherever you go in the world. So we've got a standardization now. Britain is very famous for its public houses, commonly known as pubs. And not that long ago, you went to a pub and you drank alcohol. That's what you went to a pub for. Then they became more places where you socialized. So instead of just being adults, you might find children in the outside having lemonade while you're having beer, you know? But if you wanted food, it was a bag of crisps, it was some pork scratchings, or maybe a pie if you were lucky, warmed up in a microwave. But the society has changed in England, particularly now. And that culture of drinking, people still drink, but they tend to drink at home or somewhere differently. So to make money, lots of pubs have closed because they didn't get the customers. They started serving food. And that's where the money is for them. That's where the profit is. And when it first happened, they were really good. You know, they spent a lot of money. It became restaurants really by any other name. But now lots of the chain pubs have reduced the quality down. And I think it's awful. And I said simply don't eat in very many pub eateries now, for want of a better word. So some of the food is the best in the world. But if you're asking me, is English food the best in the world? I'm going back through my mind, thinking the last places I've eaten out, and I eat out quite a lot now. And this year, I've eaten in a Lebanese restaurant, a Peruvian restaurant, several Chinese restaurants, a Japanese restaurant, many times in an Italian restaurant just this year. Can't think of one time I've eaten in an English restaurant in England.
Okay. So you're not such a big fan of pub grub. And by the way, grub is a very colloquial way of saying food. It's like, I want some grub. And often we associate pub and grub together because, of course, they rhyme. So it's like, I could really do with some pub grub. And to be honest, again, the fact that I don't live in England anymore, whenever I do go home and I stay for a couple of weeks, this is what I fancy. Well, there are two things I fancy. The first thing is going to like a nice pub, ideally an independent kind of gourmet pub where you're going to have some nice pies on the menu. You might have steak. You might have some other like pub classics as well. And I really enjoy this experience. And I think nowadays you can get very good food there. But if we're thinking about the most famous chain of pubs, which is Wetherspoons, where it's known for having very, very cheap prices, and you can get a wide range of different meals. You can get breakfast, and it's dirt cheap. It's dirt cheap, meaning it's so cheap that you start to question, like, okay, something's not quite right here. And in those kind of places, I admit that the food is awful. You can go for a pint, but you're not going to eat well. But the other thing that I look forward to eating whenever I come back home, especially because I'm from Bradford, I often say Leeds, but I'm technically from Bradford. And Bradford is often known as being the curry capital of the UK, because
Now you're talking.
we have fantastic Indian and Pakistani restaurants, and you can really tell the difference between
Yep.
the average Indian restaurant around Bradford, Leeds, also Manchester and Birmingham as well, and here in Belgium or when I'm in Spain. You can always eat Indian food in Belgium or Spain, but it's never quite the same. So whenever I go home, I always know I need pub food, pub grub, and a really good curry, a really good Indian.
Absolutely. I was sent on a course for a whole summer once to Leicester, and Leicester are famous for their curries as well. And at the end, I became an expert in Indian curry. It was amazing. I absolutely love it. And the lady, Kerry, who appears in some of my videos, she does the voiceovers for me. She's a tiny little lady, very slim, but she likes the spiciest, hottest food you have ever seen. And I remember being out with her once in an Indian restaurant, and I have something like Rogan Josh, something very mild,
Very standard.
Yeah, and she always orders the hottest one that's there. Usually it's got warnings on the menu. And I saw the guy on the next table earwigging, listening in to what she was ordering because he just sat down. Yeah. And so Hez comes, he orders the same, and he's on this table over here. And so we're just chatting away, and I've tasted one of these things she eats, and it absolutely, I can't do it, it'd kill me. So and we're just chatting away, and suddenly there's a commotion on the other table, and this guy's wife is like undoing his top collar. He's gone the colour of purple. I don't mean red. I mean purple. And sweat is running down him. The waiters there, they're bringing him glasses of milk to try and cool him down. And Kerry's just like finishing that. Was that all right? Well, it could have been a bit spicier,
Oh, wow.
Amazing. Do you like spicy?
I mean, I like spicy, but it doesn't look like I like spicy. What I mean by that is that I won't go for the hottest. Like, I'm not that mental. I'm not that crazy. But I'll usually go for like one above what you'd get. So a Rogan Josh, a Boona, a Doppiaza, they're all kind of like, they're spicy, but not that spicy. You can tell a little bit of heat. So I'll usually go for the one above. It's got a kick, and I like it to be spicy, but I'm not crazy enough to go for like a Vindaloo or even a Fal, which I think is the spiciest one. Because then
crazy. Yeah.
You lose a bit of the flavor as well. And
I think so.
It needs to be spicy.
Do you not think it's some of it showing off? Sometimes you go to a curry house, as we would call them, a curry house, and there's a group of lads in their early 20s, and they're all trying to outdo each other for having the hottest thing. Bring me hot. No, the fall isn't hot enough. Add something else to it, Oh, I like them hot. And you think, really? Just immaturity, isn't it, really?
I know what you mean. It is sometimes a bit of a competition. And if you see that one person gets a Vindaloo and you're like, I can do it as well, I promise. And then minutes later, you'll see that you've got sweat dripping down your face. You'll be bright red. And this is what usually happens to me, even though deep inside, I'm really enjoying it. I promise I'm enjoying it. But I'll still be sweaty and I'll still go red. And I think it's just, I don't know, my biology, like it responds that way to curry. But I've always had curry since I was a young kid. So I'm used to it and I do enjoy it. But maybe it's a little bit of like kind of punishing myself. It's like that pain that you get when you're doing exercise where it's pain, you're not comfortable, but you're going to feel better after. And with spicy food, it kind of feels the same way.
And then you regret it the next day. And when you go into the bathroom, man, that pain doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, not nice. So on that note, let's talk about some British classics. And you'll be able to see it on the screen in case you want to check it out. If you're just listening to this podcast, then fair enough. We can kind of make you imagine that you can see the plate in front of you. So the first one is a roast dinner, a Sunday roast, which is pretty much the same as a Christmas dinner. Christmas dinner, you might add a couple of extras. You might have, I don't know, pigs in blankets, for example, which are little sausages wrapped in bacon, which you wouldn't usually have the rest of the year. But a Sunday roast or a roast dinner is essentially having roast meat, which could be beef, chicken, or gammon. And gammon is like ham, essentially, with some roast potatoes, maybe some broccoli, maybe some peas, some mashed potato. Essentially, you have a range of vegetable and you have a roast meat, which is drowned in gravy, which is like meat sauce, meat juices. And it's common to also have Yorkshire puddings as well, which is like pancake mix and it's savory. And you make
I
kind
love
of like
Yorkshire puddings.
a bowl almost, and you'll fill your Yorkshire puddings with gravy, and it's delicious, in my opinion. Steve, what do you think about a roast dinner? You a big fan?
I'm a huge fan of roast dinners. However, I try to watch my weight. So I would guess I have maybe one a month.
Okay.
Roast lamb is my favorite to have with it. And yeah, Yorkshire puddings, no, not for me.
How come? Why don't you like Yorkshire puddings?
I don't think they've got a place on a roast dinner. I just don't think they have anything to. It's basically batter, isn't it? It's just a lump of batter. It's everyone's different. Everyone likes different things, and that's absolutely. I'm very popular when I go out to a carvery. So sometimes you go to a carvery restaurant or a carvery pub, and they will be serving roast dinner. I'm going next Sunday to one. And you go up, you pay your price, and you can help yourself pretty much to it all. And you're usually limited to one Yorkshire pudding. And I'm very popular because I always have to take it so that someone else can have mine. You know, I don't want it. Oh, we'll get it anyway and I'll have yours, you know. But no, to everyone out there who's listening, please don't try Yorkshire puddings. They're disgusting.
I beg to differ, for the record. I beg
You're
to
wrong.
differ, which is a nice way of saying I disagree. But that's our first meal. Let's move on to the next one. And Steve, do you want to describe what you see and tell us about it? What is this?
Yeah, absolutely. I can describe it. It's beans on toast. And it's got grated cheese on the toast. I can honestly say I've never eaten it.
Whoa. You've never had beans on toast?
Oh, yes, I've had that all the time. It's a handy snack. It's easy. Even with my poor culinary skills, culinary, a word meaning to do with cooking, with my poor culinary skills, I can make good beans on toast. I've never had beans on toast with grated cheese on it.
No? I mean, cheesy beanos is another way of saying it.
I know people who do it. I've never fancied it.
For me, this completes the dish. And of course, this is obviously not gourmet food. It's very, very cheap and kind of nutritious food as well. And of course, you can get a loaf of bread and you can toast a couple of slices of bread. You can spread a little bit of butter on it if you want. And then you just pour some beans on toast. It's simple. And usually people would have Heinz beans as well. It's the most famous brand. And personally, maybe I'm a bit modern here. What I do is, of course, I'll crack a lot of black pepper on top. And I also add some chili flakes because, again, I like spicy food. And I feel like chili flakes go really well with this. And for me, Then when you grate some cheddar cheese on top and it starts to melt into the beans, that's when it becomes delicious. But I know it's not gourmet, it's not famous, but it's a solid thing that you can have midweek really quickly, and it's so cheap. It's peanuts.
It is. It's full of sugar, isn't it? They are full of sugar, baked beans, particularly Heinz ones. You can get reduced sugar, but that image that you're showing there, that's got teaspoons and teaspoons full of sugar in it.
You're ruining it for me.
I'm sorry.
Here's me thinking it's really healthy and like, yeah, well, it's got a lot of sugar, artificial.
Yeah. And cheese isn't that good for you either. What's your favorite cheese?
I mean, I love all kinds of cheese, to be honest. Like, a good cheddar is delicious, like in a cheese toasty, for example. But I can have Parmesan on lots and lots of different things, not only pasta. Mozzarella's delicious. Manchego's delicious. Honestly, I try everything. I like blue cheese as well, which I know is a little bit divisive. Some people love it, other people hate it, but I quite like a bit of gorgonzola or, to be honest, anything. Are you into your cheese, Steve?
I like feta. I like Greek goat cheese. That's one of my favorites. I don't like cheddar. I thought it was called cheddar because it was from Cheddar Gorge, which is an area of England. But apparently it's the action, it's a verb to cheddar cheese. It's some way that it's made that's different. I don't like the texture, not the taste. So I like crumbly cheeses rather than cheddar. So a Cheshire is perfect for me.
Okay. It's true that feta does make everything better.
Do you know what? That's another good one for you. Have you just come up with that as well? That is very good.
Nah, I mean, I've heard it a few times. I've used it before, but of course they rhyme. Feta makes everything better.
It does.
Now, next up, we have, of course, fish and chips, which you get from a chippy, which is a fish and chip shop. Of course, you can get fish and chips from pubs and from restaurants, but for me, it's not quite the same. My idea of having fish and chips is when you're sat outside on a bench or something like that, and the fish and chips comes wrapped in like old newspaper, and then you cover it with malt vinegar, lots of salt, maybe some tartar sauce or some curry sauce as well, or some gravy. Fish and chips for me is elite, but it's true that I never feel that good after fish and chips because it is just a bunch of fried food. So, that's the only downside for me. Steve, you're a big fan though, aren't you?
I am, but I wouldn't eat that fish and chips that you've just shown. It's terrible. It looks dry. The chips aren't cooked properly. There's too much batter. That's a terrible example of what's a fabulous dish. Tell you a story.
Go on.
I teach a lot of people from Japan. For some reason, a lot of them are either doctors or in the government. And I was teaching this tax inspector, a lovely lady, and she was coming to London for the first time, but she was only coming for 2 days because her proper holiday, the reason she was coming was to go to Paris. So she was getting the train through to London. And she said, Steve, I'm only really going to be there for 1 full day, half a day traveling. So I'll only be there for 1 day. What should I do in London? I said, well, you've got to see Big Ben. You've got to see Buckingham Palace. I said, and you've got to have fish and chips. She'd never been to England. You've got to have fish and chips. Okay, I'll have fish and chips. And when I spoke to her a few weeks later, I said, how was your London trip? And she said, oh, it was great. Saw Big Ben, saw Buckingham Palace. She says, and I had fish and chips, but you didn't tell me how expensive it was. So I said, how was it expensive? And she said, it was £55.
What?
For 1 portion of fish and chips.
What are you on about?
Yes, exactly. So it turns out I just said, go and get fish and chips. And if I said to you, go and get some fish and chips, you're going to the local fish and chip shop, known as a chippy, and you're coming back with, as you say, a bag of fish and chips. she was in Knightsbridge and went to the local restaurant. So she sat down and had fish and chips in a restaurant, very posh. So I'm full of apologies. She says it was nice. I'm not surprised. However, when I was young, fish and chips was a reasonably cheap meal, particularly for a family like ours. Like I said, we didn't have much money, so it was a real treat. So my mum and dad would share one portion of fish and chips, and us kids would share the other portion, It was a reasonable meal for us to buy, affordable.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the Albert Dock filming for my next video just a couple of days ago, and I passed a fish and chip shop that's actually on the Albert Dock. This is a famous touristy area of Liverpool, so you'd expect to pay a little bit more. Fish and chips, £22.50.
For one person?
One person. £22.50. I couldn't believe it. The average price now has gone up. Liverpool's more expensive than most other cities for fish and chips. I don't know why, because it's on the sea, but I don't know why it's more expensive. But the average is around £12 to £13. So this was almost double. Could not believe it. And it was full. They were queuing out the door to get these fish and chips. So maybe that lady's in London, my nice Japanese friend Lee, perhaps she didn't pay that much after all in a restaurant.
It's ridiculous. Inflation is real, but it's true that the cost of fish and chips has been rising quite a lot. And then that kind of takes away some of the appeal, because the whole point is to have cheap fast food, which it's tasty, it's cheap. You can, I remember I used to be able to get fish and chips for easily less than a tenner. And now it's very, very hard to find anywhere like that. And in particular, of course, the cost of the fish, which tends to be haddock or cod. And you end up having to pay like £8 or £9 for the piece of fish, and then a few quid for the chips. Then if you want a drink or you want a sauce, it all adds up. So it's a shame, but I guess it's the reality.
How much is a bag of chips in Leeds, for example? Do you know how much a bag of chips is? A portion. Proper word is a portion, but we frequently call it a bag of chips.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I reckon it's a few quid, like £3, something like that.
I think it's about the same here. When I was little, I used to be sent to the chip shop sometime just to get a bag of chips, and it cost 1 penny. I would go in and say, "Can I have a one of chips?" And that was enough for easily 2 people. A one of chips.
The good old days.
Good old days. That's how old I am.
All right, let's keep going with some other ones. So here we have a lovely dish, which is again a kind of pub grub classic. And it's a classic that I used to have midweek. I'd get home from school and I'd ask my mum, like, "Oh, what's for tea?" Note here, in the north of England and in some areas in the south, we say that the first meal of the day is breakfast, the second one is dinner, and the third one is tea. So I'd finish school and I'd be asking my mum, like, "Oh, Mum, what's for tea?" Like, "What's for dinner?" in neutral English. And just say, "Oh, bangers and mash. Is that all right?" And bangers are the sausages, and mash, of course, is mashed potato. So if you're looking here, you can see some mashed potato, some peas, and some onion gravy with a few bangers. So a few sausages, which again, it's cheap, it's easy, it's hearty food, which, to be honest, looking at it now, it looks pretty good. Maybe the photo of fish and chips didn't quite do fish and chips justice, but here, I reckon that the image of bangers and mash looks pretty decent. Steve, what do you reckon?
I think that's making me hungry.
And is this right up your street?
That's right up my street. It just made me think. not really seen these pictures before. Something that I've never tried, and I always wanted to, is toad in the hole. Have you ever had that? Which is,
Yeah.
again, bangers or sausages.
Yeah, I've had toad in the hole, which is for you like a nightmare because
It's
toad
batter,
in the
isn't it?
hole is made with like what Yorkshire puddings are made
Yeah.
from. And it's a big tray where you'll put lots of the mixture in and you'll put lots of sausages there in between. And then you'll usually accompany it with the same stuff. So gravy, mash, maybe peas or broccoli or something similar, which is good. But in that scenario, I think it is too much batter, too much
Right.
Yorkshire pudding.
Yeah. I'll probably never try it because, as you
No.
say, it looks like Yorkshire pudding to me. So, well,
It is.
interesting.
Now, we've not got too much time left, so let's quickly go through the remaining dishes. Steve, a few words on this one that you can see. What is it and what do you think of it?
Okay, well, this is a full English. Of course, if you go to Ireland, it's a full Irish. And if you go to Scotland, it's a full Scottish. It's a breakfast. I happen to know because I watch your videos. I'm a big fan of your videos. And if
Thank
people
you.
are new here, you should watch Lewis's videos. They're really, really impressive. Not only to learn your English, but he tells you some really interesting things. For example, he doesn't eat breakfast because he's a crazy man. And I couldn't believe it when he said that. So in England, this is what everyone else in the world thinks we eat for breakfast. I have maybe one a year, and then only if I'm in a hotel and it's come for free.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't really thank you for that, Lewis. What about you?
I mean, to be honest, a full English, full Irish, full Scottish, which are all pretty much the same, they're really nice, but it's something that I think people from abroad think and assume that we have on a regular basis, which is very, very far from the truth. Because this is something you might have if maybe you're hungover and you're having like a late breakfast / brunch and you just want something greasy to soak up all of the alcohol. Or if you are maybe a builder or you work in construction in some kind of way, you have a trade, because you're moving around and you're using your body with work, then it's more common to have a full English. So I would have it from time to time, and I do really enjoy it. But if you have a full English, you're not going to have lunch after. It's like a brunch, essentially.
Yeah. Those things, those round black things, the black puddings. Tell the nice viewers what they're made of, Lewis.
So it is made of blood. It's blood sausage, essentially. So we call black pudding blood sausage, basically. So it's made of blood.
Yeah.
I don't know, a little bit of meat as well. I don't know exactly how they're made, but they're a bit like Marmite. So you either love it or you hate it. Personally, I do really enjoy it. I really like it. So some people will ask to get rid of the black pudding, but for me, it will stay. And if somebody else doesn't want their black pudding, kind of like you with Yorkshire puddings, I'll be like, oh, go on then. I'll have another piece of black pudding. More.
It's one of the big differences, I think. You said it's very similar between a full English, full Irish, full Scottish, full Welsh. In Scotland, they will have a tendency to put haggis there.
Mm-hmm.
And haggis is the inside of a sheep's stomach that's stuffed full of entrails, the things that are inside the creature with spices. So I don't know which is worse, really. They both sound awful. They both taste fine. So, yeah, full English, not really for me.
Okay, fair enough. Now I'm going to go through the other savory dishes. So the next one we have is a classic pub pie. Maybe we're filled with steak or filled with chicken. It could be filled with different things. Another pub grub classic. But let's keep going. The other one is another kind of pie, which is shepherd's pie or cottage pie, which is made with mince. So mince meat and different vegetables, the meat sauce, and it's topped with mashed potato and sometimes cheese, and then popped in the oven, which I think in different countries you have a similar version of this dish. But again, it's another classic and another very hearty meal. And
Yeah,
continuing,
the difference between shepherd's pie and cottage pie, a shepherd looks after sheep. So a shepherd's pie has the meat from sheep in it. So it's usually lamb or maybe mutton if that creature's a little bit older when it's killed. So shepherd's pie, lamb, cottage pie, usually beef.
exactly. Perfect. So now let's finish off with puddings, with desserts. So I'm going to stop sharing in a second, but first, here you can see sticky toffee pudding. And then here we've got an apple crumble. And the last one I've chosen is Victoria sponge. And these are just 3 examples of classic English puddings. Of course, sticky toffee pudding is made with toffee and dates. It's very, very sweet, served with cream or ice cream or custard. Apple crumble is made with apples, and then this crumble, which is lots of like oats and stuff like that. Again, topped with cream or ice cream or custard. And a Victoria sponge is basically a sponge, which in the middle it's cut and you've got some kind of like cream, I think, and jam. And then on top, just like some sugar on top. I don't know if it's like frosted sugar, caster sugar. You can tell that my knowledge of puddings isn't quite as good as my knowledge of savory dishes. But Steve, do you have a favorite British dessert? A favorite British pudding?
My absolute favorite is something called a rum bar. I like the taste of rum. I don't drink much in the way of alcohol, but I like the taste of rum. And there's a drink called a rum bar. It doesn't actually have rum in it. It has the flavor of rum. So, but they're quite difficult to find now. So I like that. Apple pie probably is the most common one. And when I was a teenager, I went to one of the Channel Islands called Jersey, which is in the English Channel. And there I had apple pie for the first time in my life as a teenager. And it was apple pie, it was warm, and it had ice cream on the side. And I thought this was a delight. It felt like an angel was dancing on my tongue. I've never tasted anything like it. And so I came back and apple pie became a firm favorite. But I've yet to find an apple pie that tastes as good as that first one that I had in the Channel Islands when I was a teenager. What about you? What's your favorite?
I mean, this is reminding me of you when you were absolutely starving, almost lost in the desert, and then having this surf and turf. But in my case, as I said, I don't have much of a sweet tooth. But if I had to pick one, I think I would probably go for sticky toffee pudding because it's always good and it's like a crowd pleaser. I think everybody likes it.
It's always good. That's great.
Like,
it's always good.
It's always good. Like, it's like pizzas. You order a bad pizza and it's still probably going to be good. So with sticky toffee pudding, the same kind of principle applies because it's always toffee-y, it's always sweet, it's always nice and like soft and it melts in the mouth. And yeah, I say if I had to pick one, I'd go for sticky toffee pudding.
For another video that will really improve your natural English conversations, give this a click and I'll see you there. Take care.